is KRSE on your Channel 7. Yale, Washington to the world. Woo! Time to let your rhythm be born.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to KRSE Radio with your fabulous hosts here, Laura Mooney
And Jaime Lealanaya.
We're so happy to be with you today. We're going to be expanding what we discussed last time. If you recall, we had that beautiful toast at the end of the last episode, and we were toasting to everlasting life. And Ramtha said, and may you know that. So today, we're going to be talking about this potential for each human being to have everlasting life. So the subject is going to be the God gene. Do we, in fact, have an immortality gene?
Awesome. That sounds really interesting.
It's very interesting. So before we get going, let's play this short clip from Ramtha where he's letting us know we are the greatest mystery.
You are the greatest mystery. It is no place, no other person, no thing. It is you. You know nothing of you. You are a mystery unto your countenance. To explain in terms that are most modern and relative to the age, components that are important about you, to be able to begin to understand the components such as brain and understand how brain works. Computer is perfect analogy. You came into this life, this babe in the womb was already following a doctrine, pattern of the soul. The soul is a book. It's a book of life, appropriately called, and it contains within it all that the other part of you, the God of you, the divine of you, accomplished in a former incarnation and somewhere else between. And the accomplishment lives up to the prime mandate, make known the unknown. Many entities say, what is my destiny in life? The basis of all destiny is to make known the unknown. We are at the heart of our being, you and I, and everyone seen and unseen. You are divine. And how do we know that you're divine? Because you can create something out of nothing. And what you think matters. Now, all life is affected by an attitude that you wear. Life is either injured by your attitude or is enriched because you walked by it. You are divine.
So inspiring. It's just so beautiful.
I know sometimes you just want to keep playing all those clips.
Yes.
Hey, let's do a little promo right now for the Rumble channel.
Oh, great.
Ramtha's official channel has all of these beautiful excerpts of Ramtha throughout all of time. Many of them explicitly talking about what's going on in the world today. So that's rumble.com. We also have a YouTube channel. It's called Ramtha's Official. So enjoy the clips that are played there.
And you can find all these links, obviously, here at KRSE.com.
Yes, at the end of every episode, we're going to have, well, posted with each of the episodes, we'll have all the links for you guys. So, you talked about the brain as computer. I mean, we have this amazing brain that we hardly use any of. So...
And I thought it was really interesting, how he's saying, we are divine because we can create out of nothing. And then he's connecting it to attitude, our thoughts, the brain. That's what really is driving the ship, and that's what actually makes us divine. The ability to have a thought and the free will, to entertain. something and make it happen in our life. That makes us divine. Just like in Genesis, we have God, the creator, and it's us as well.
Right. And I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of times over the years have we heard Ramtha say, "You're here to make known the unknown"? And most of us don't even realize that we're not doing that. We're not evolving if we're not making known the unknown. We're just in that static state of the current personality.
Exactly. We're creators. We're supposed to be creating something new.
Something new.
Not just being on a cycle of repetition that gets boring.
Exactly. All right. So are we immortal? Back in 2004, I believe we discussed last time the movie, the documentary, What the Bleep Was Made.
Right.
And so we're going to play a short excerpt from that, where Ramtha is, in fact, talking about immortality.
Let's hear it.
Is it possible to have mind over matter? Baby, the brain is king. The body is the kingdom. Yes. How long will that take to happen? Long enough for it to be the mainstay of your personality. To our very brain, those great thunderstorms, we have tapped yet let a third of its ability. If we lived entirely the wholeness of our brain, which would require the wholeness of our DNA be activated, we would become the legends of old, the immortals. Everyone's DNA, they use less than a third of the DNA. Did you know that there are immortal genes? Did you know that you have immortal DNAs? Did you know that you have the DNA to grow any part of your body, to change it any way you want to? Did you know you have the DNA of humanity? Did you know that you can turn a predisposition of genetics of blindness into a predisposition of sight? Did you know that you can tap your DNA to not only make you immortal, but reverse your aging? Do your genes have that? Yes, they do. It's what gene fingerprinting is all about in its infantile stages. But it's embarrassing when we really know it. Because the great question is, well, if I have an immortal gene, how come I'm not immortal? Why in the is it still there? You can edit that out if you wish. Gotcha. Or you can leave it in according to the maturity of the audience. But I'm certain I have said nothing new under the sun, Horatio. You know why? Because you focus only on your emotional means to an end. So your DNA holds what is replicant in you to an experience. You have never gone outside of yourself to create the experience of yourself.
Wow.
You know, what gets me excited there is when he's talking about this immortal gene, and if we did, in fact, turn it on, we'd be like the immortals of old, you know?
Yeah.
Like Apollonius of Tyana.
And Jesus, of course.
Jesus, of course. His brother Thomas. Buddha. I was looking at the site. It's a list verse that shows Christ-like figures who even predated Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I'll put the link down there for that. But when he says you've never gone outside of yourself to experience yourself, I mean, there's a key there, you know.
And it's even in the Bible, you know, in Genesis and Exodus, you know, they're talking about, mainly Genesis, they're talking about that they lived for 900 years, you know, the ancestors, you know, of the patriarchs, you know, of Israel, you know, they lived for 800 and 900, thousands of years, and then their lives, start to get smaller. It's in there. They used to live long lives in comparison to what we have now. And the fact that what Ram is talking about, the scientific fact, that we only utilize so little, like 3% of the DNA, and then they say, oh yeah, the rest is junk. I mean, come on, why is it there? And the same with the brain, Einstein, I think he mapped like 10% of his brain capacity, that's what he was operating with. So he's a genius, but we only use like 3%. So there's a lot of room for possibility here.
A lot of room for possibility. And when they call it junk DNA, they literally know that everything that exists in nature is in our DNA.
Yeah.
So you were going to talk about Christ in relation to him talking about everlasting life.
This whole idea, of everlasting life, if you come from Christianity, like my background, where I come from, you immediately think and remember the words of Jesus, when he's saying, if you believe in me, if you follow me, if you do as I am teaching you to do, you will know everlasting life. And we find this, like, specifically one of my favorite Gospels, the Gospel of John, in chapter 6, in verses 47. The whole chapter, it's a very interesting chapter in John 6 because it's the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes that we also have in the synoptic Gospels, meaning in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. So it's one story that they all agree happened, where Jesus is on this hill, on this mountain, when he gives the blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who are persecuted, and so on. They will know the kingdom of God. And then he teaches the Our Father, he teaches that we should pray to God as our Father. He didn't say, pray to me. He never said that. Jesus is nowhere recorded that he asked to be worshipped. But these words that he said about, if you follow what I'm teaching you, if you believe in me, basically believing what I'm telling you the truth, you will know everlasting life. But that has become now into, if you eat my flesh and drink my blood, as he being the bread of life, the bread of eternal life, it has become something so far removed from what he apparently is clearly just saying. It's like, look, what I can do, you can do greater. Look, I am a messenger. I'm sent here by my Father, who is your Father too. We're not different. And he's telling us all these great truths, which are escaping us because religion, usually models everything. And now you have to believe in certain things and do certain actions to get access to God. And that's where we get lost, because it's within us. Just as he said, the kingdom of God is within us. Just like Ram is explaining, the potential is in your brain. You only use 3%. The potential is in your DNA already. Everything in the whole nature, like you said, is already encoded in our DNA, and we have only scratched the surface. So the kingdom of God, really, everlasting life, potentially, is already in us.
It's definitely already in us. And when he said, verily I say unto you, he that believeth in me have everlasting life. Like you said, he wasn't talking about himself.
No.
And neither does Ramtha say, talking about worship me.
Exactly.
It's the training to understand how to use that brain and how to literally talk to God.
Exactly. To have access to that divine that we started the episode with, that we are divine because we are creators.
So let's go back to the immortality gene. And I want to play a short clip from 2001 where Ramtha is talking about a specific god, Radhabin. You want to give us a little background on Radhabin?
Yeah, Radhabin we know because of Ramtha. He's the one that tells us the story of this person who, in ancient times, before it was recorded as the Egyptian history, it was the first pharaoh, Ramta tells us, Ratabin. And he was an enlightened being. He was a teacher, a great leader of his people, just like Buddha would have been, like Apollonius to his people, or Jeshua, Jesus, to all our generations that came after, that follow that message. So Ratabin was this experiment of the gods that became conscious and aware and awakened and became this extraordinary god in his own right.
Who said, I will no longer serve.
Exactly. My favorite, my ultimate favorite story.
Mine too. So in this excerpt, again, we're going back to the immortal gene and its discovery. So let's go ahead and play that.
The scope of science today has already identified the immortal gene in your DNA. It's been a long time coming. Your immortal gene. What do you think the science of the future is going to be within your lifetime? What of all of your genes is going to make the most money? Is the gene defect of curing sugar diabetes going to make the most money? Alzheimer's? Cancer? Cancers from brain tumors, throat cancer, to lung cancer, to pancreatic cancer, cancer of the adrenals, cancer of the uterus, cancer of the prostate, cancer of the breast, cancer of the bone, the limb, the skin. Think that's going to make the most money? No, I tell you what's going to make the most money. What do you think it is? Immortality. And the second greatest money maker is to reverse aging.
And don't we all want that?
Yes, definitely.
I have always been 30 years younger.
Always. For as long as I can remember.
For as long as I can remember.
Yes.
So, as we look at our world today, in particularly the fields of medicine, integrative medicine, everything that you do in integrative medicine is very much so focused on reverse aging. Everybody wants to live forever. Although many, when you say, many people go, well, when I look at the world, who wants to live forever? But we want to live forever. First, we don't want to see the end of the show. But second, we want to live forever because we know how to use the brain.
Well, there's so much to discover. There's so much to experience. I mean, just look at the night sky. It's very vast out there, and we haven't began to explore, so many possibilities, and we don't want to grow old and lose our vitality. We want to be alive to be able to experience and richly everything.
Yeah, to keep making known the unknown.
Exactly, as creators.
So, I was looking up, the industry of reverse aging, and literally, it says it's about a $62.6 billion industry.
Wow.
It's called the anti-aging market. And if we go down here and we look at gene editing, which, CRISPR, whether you're having that done intentionally pre-childbirth or later, or through the vax, which we'll talk about in the near future.
Yes.
But gene editing is a $6.94 billion industry and expected to continue to grow. So
it's real. It exists. It's happening.
It is happening, but that's what we would call mass to mass, versus mind that will produce the reality in mass. And again, that training we get where?
Yeah, at KRSE, that's the foundation of Ramtha School of Enlightenment, is to teach us not anything that we aren't already, but to teach us how to tap into this potential that is already in us. And that's where the ability to hold a thought, to be able to focus an intentional thought, and to utilize our brain and our brain's capacity to activate those genes that are laying there dormant in our DNA. You know, that's a very large part of the training at Ramtha School.
I think the key word, too, that you said there was to stop thinking. You know, I remember going to a science exhibition with one of our students who was working with what's a force plate that measures gain or loss of mass. And we were at this science fair, and I was one of the participants, and there was a couple other students there that were going to sit on this force plate and focus.
Like a gravity plate.
Yeah, it's like a gravity plate where you can lose mass or you gain mass.
And it'll record it. It'll show it.
It would show it. And I remember standing there while one of the other students was demonstrating, and one of the professors at the university walks up and is watching and asked me what the heck's going on, and I was explaining. And I actually said to this professor that we're trained in how to stop thinking. And the professor turns and looks at me and goes, "Nobody can do that." And I was like, well, then you should come visit us. Because it's training how to literally be able to stop time. And as you were discussing earlier, is we are the creators, and it's only when we can stop time do we create.
It's what Jesus was talking about, you know, that I wasn't the one doing this miracle. It was the Father within me, you know, that created this miracle. And that's what we learn, to switch roles. If God really lives within us, and Ramtha identifies the God within us as the observer, that is always there, is keeping us alive, is running all these processes, you know, that keeps us alive and more. And learning to switch from being just a human personality, a mortal, limited human with all kinds of problems and issues, to put that to rest and then move to the back of the room, to the back of the brain, and become that extraordinary observer, which is the God that is already in us. So there's a training to it. It's the mechanisms of creating and immortality, just what Ram is talking about.
And that's actually what Jesus said, that he knew when he was speaking as the Son of Man versus the Son of God.
He said it.
Same thing.
Very clear.
So how about that? There was an article, we're just going to discuss it briefly, about immortality, to where we'll put the link for this, but they were actually showing that in 1998, January of 1998, in Science magazine, it's all about the immortality gene being discovered.
You have to remember, the audience needs to remember that the mapping of the human genome was a new thing. You know, back in 1998, you know, it was only a decade old, if at all, you know, where they were discovering all these different genes and understanding what this gene does this other gene takes care of that, and so forth. So they were mapping the human genome. Mm-hmm. And so that's when that allowed them to advance and continue to move forward to an understanding in 1998 with this publication that, hey, we found it. There's actually an immortality gene. We're built with it.
Mm-hmm. I think its name was Church, his last name. I'd have to look that up, but I think that's one of the things we do even present at the Class 101.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's play another clip from Ramtha, April 2001, on our immortality gene, and are we even using it?
Yeah, what do we do with it? That's what I want to know.
So that immortal gene, discovered by genetic scientists, have found the God gene. They found a gene that holds the promise that is actually the benefactor of the gods to the hominid, or to Cro-Magnon, which all of you are. We have found a print of our past and our future. This gene, why is it so important, what you call immortality? Well, the Egyptians understood that. 10,000 years ago. They understood it 25,000 years ago, and there were 2 ice ages in between. Now, here's about the immortal gene. It is not as if I have invented this immortal gene, but I talked about it 22 years ago before it was ever discovered in science. So, how do we know that we are fathered and mothered by gods? Because of that gene. Now, you know what that gene has the capacity of doing? Allow us to take a long elliptical orbit and to watch the procession of the stars in all of their houses in a whole lifetime that begins with 25,000 years. You have an immortal gene in you. What are you doing with it? And why isn't it acting up?
Exactly.
Why isn't it acting up?
Why?
But it's interesting, he said that it was in 1998 that they discovered it, and Ramtha was talking about it 22 years before this clip you just even heard, which was 2001.
Well, from the beginning, when Ram came in the scene, in the late 70s, and he was saying, you are gods, you are immortal.
In our next episode, we're going to get a little bit into what he talked about, that you were fathered and mothered by gods. Not in this one, though, but the next one's going to be very exciting.
Oh, there's so much. There's so much to share that Ramtha has given us, over decades. There's so much. It's exciting.
Yeah, and, when he says, why isn't it acting up? And one of the first thoughts I had was, well, it's not taught in public school. Nobody knows they have an immortality gene. Nobody really understands they're only using this little speck in the yellow brain there, And
if you don't know it is there, then obviously you're not going to pursue it.
Mm-mm.
And then even less, no one is teaching what to do with it, how to activate it.
I mean, how many times have you been in audience and Ram says, how many of you wish you'd learned this when you were a child?
Exactly.
And we all raise our hand, because what a different world we would live in.
And it's interesting, that article, and the link is obviously, as we mentioned, all the links to everything that we talk about is available there in the notes with every episode. But it's interesting in this article that they talk about what activates this gene and why isn't it turned on. And one of the things they come up with, that it's attitude and thought, that either turns it on or off. So that's exactly what Ram was teaching from the very beginning. It's the observer with a powerful ability to hold a thought clearly, not reacting and moving, from emotion to emotion like associative memory, but a creative thought, a focused thought that we learn to do. And that's a mechanism that can actually activate this gene. And the scientists agree.
Exactly. So it does take training to learn how to still the mind, to be able to displace gravity, if you will, displace our will. In other words, to be able to stop time, take a look at something that we want to experience as we are the creator, and then manifest it. It takes extraordinary training. I know you hear people all the time, talk about creating your day. So many of the more new age people out there talk about creating your day. But Ramtha's taught that since when?
Well, since the very beginning.
Since the very beginning.
When he used to take his students back in the early 80s, into the desert to wait for the sun to rise and to greet the morning and to create the morning. I mean, it is from the very beginning.
It is from the very beginning. And not only do we learn to create the day, we also learn to create an entire year. And we even create the future life. So if we don't turn this gene on, we have secured our future in our next incarnation, wherever that might be.
The key is to become the creator, to become the God that is in us already. And there's an actual art. Even Jesus said, if you believe what I'm telling you, if you follow me, what I'm showing you, you will know it. You will know everlasting life. I mean, he said it too.
So you recently shared with me a clip of Zecharia Sitchin.
Yeah, there was this very powerful interview that I ran into, and it has been since removed from YouTube, but I ran into it. Very, very keen, very interested in Zecharia Sitchin's work. And he had an interview about this potential 12 planet with the actual person who was in charge of the U.S. Naval Observatory and the director of the astronomy labs there, Mr. Harrington, and Robert Harrington. So they have this conversation, and then Harrington is explaining to Sitchin, yeah, we have noticed some gravitational anomalies, in Neptune and Pluto, and there's some things that can't be explained unless we add that there's another planet. So they have this very interesting conversation, and we preserve that for you. It's available here at this
In the links.
the notes.
Yeah. And in January 2016, you had Caltech talking about it in an article.
The same thing. So that was like 2016. So Harrington and Sitchin were talking about this in the 70s. And then you have in 2016, much more recently, Caltech, came out with a big announcement because of the gravitational anomalies, and they're able to map things. And they say, like, there's got to be this long elliptical. They call it the intruder. This long elliptical planet that is like about 4 to 5 times the Earth, but it's not gaseous. It's not so large that it couldn't support life. But it's more like the Earth, but it's just so far flung that it matches what Ramtha had been talking about, that there was this 25,000-year elliptical orbit of this planet of the gods who had a hand in manipulating our DNA, and we ended up with this gene because they also have this ability in their DNA to live long life, because for them 1 year, for us, is 25,000 years for them. So imagine that.
Imagine that. And what did he say? That being on that planet, that through their 25,000-year trek, they get to see all the procession of all the stars and all the planets. That's
so fantastic. Talking about possibility again and the night sky that we haven't begun to explore, because if the orbit of this planet, as discovered by Caltech and mentioned by Ramtha, as you heard in the clip, 25,000 year orbital, and it happens to be the same amount of time that it takes for the Earth to be able to see all of the different constellations. So the precession of the stars is like all the zodiac, it's all the various constellations, but it takes 25,000 years to go through them all. So to be able to see all of the stars, you would need a long life.
Imagine what we're missing.
There's so much.
What was it recently at one of the beautiful moments with the Master, where they played that clip on the Hubble telescope?
Telescope, yes.
Hubble telescope.
We want to escape and see it, yes.
Yeah, the newer version, and how they're picking up light millions of years forward and backwards.
Yeah.
And the amount of galaxies there are.
It's really extraordinary, because this particular region of space that Ramtha was showing us at that recent event is next to Orion and Sirius, which is particularly the star Sirius, which is a binary star. It's 2 suns together. That's where Sitchin and Harrington were plotting that this is where this planet, this extra planet of the gods, goes all the way out there. And then next to it, next to Orion, Orion's belt is very easy to spot in the sky. There's this dark region, very, very dark. So there was nothing. They thought there was nothing there. So then they said, hey, let's put the telescope pointing in that direction and see what we pick up. So it took a long time before the little bits of light were starting to arrive from thousands of years ago, that it originated traveling through space. So it's finally arriving. So we're in the past, it's long gone, but it started to pick up all this beautiful nebula and these new beautiful galaxies, which are my all-time favorite. The Christmas tree nebula, the fox fur, the butterfly. There's one that looks perfectly like an observer's eye looking. There's a rose. There's like a snowflake. It's so magical. This region of space is so magical, and there's so much life. But they thought it was empty. They thought there was nothing there.
Definitely not empty. And what did Ramtha say? There is a place for you. We don't have to keep coming back here. There's a place for you out there. And the concept that we're the only ones that exist. And when you look at that, it's like, are you out of your mind?
You see, that's what makes life exciting. There's so much to discover and live for. So much.
I would like you to talk just a little bit about the book that you were involved in, A Master's Reflection on the History of Humanity, Part 1.
Yeah, that's a two-part book, but the main title of both volumes is called A Master's Reflection on the History of Humanity, because I've always been very interested in history, and what Ramtha has to say about history is just so outrageous and so amazing. And he actually fills in so many missing questions, so much information that the scientists or historians haven't been able to discover. So what I did is working for the publishing house of Ramtha School, and charged by Ram to do this. I went and found as much as I could that I could piece together as some kind of chronological order, all the way from the beginning of creation, the beginning of the universe, and creation, the origins, and then our origins from the void as living beings, and then how we descended and we became humans, how the planets were formed, how life on Earth evolved, and then all the way into Ramtha's lifetime. The Ratabin is part of this book, is mentioned there, the whole story of how he stood up to the gods. He says, I'm no longer an experiment, I'm my own experiment, which is totally awesome. He was a rebel, just like Yeshua was, just like Ramtha is. And so I try to piece together what Ramtha's take on the history of humanity is, but from a really broad perspective. And so those books are available. You just check the links. A Master's Reflection.
Yep.
What a master knows that he can see because he has lived a long life. Again, he has activated his immortal DNA, so he can say, as a matter of fact, it's like, I'm an immortal, I am a god, I have activated this immortal gene in me, so here I am to teach you what I know.
I love that. Teach you what I know, and then be able to apply it in one's own life with the potential to become that immortal. Not to become Ramtha, but as he is, as that one mind.
Exactly,
So everybody, you remember last week, we introduced the toast.
Oh, I love those.
The invocation. And we just want to remind you about Dr. Emoto and words matter, and our body is 90+% water. What we think matters. Just like if we are contemplating and focusing and putting all our intent to become that immortal, anything else in our life that we're constantly focusing on, the body's going to follow. The body will become. So we have to be careful with what we think.
And that has been discovered by science now. I mean, Ramtha has been teaching it way before science came up, with the plasticity of the brain, the ability to have a thought that actually changes you. Mm-hmm. And so science has shown that this is possible. Norman Deutsch is one of the greatest authors, to talk about neuroplasticity, and that it's actually happening. and also the activation of the genes in our DNA, as in the article that we talked about, the immortal gene, that it's behavior and attitude and patterns of thinking that actually turn different genes on in the body, and that has been discovered recently, as in this article started to mention. So everything Ramtha has been teaching us, it's proven by science. It's been shown by science to be the truth. And we as students, we're so blessed, to actually be in the school and to have dedicated our life, in our private moments, in after work and so forth, our private life, but to apply what we're learning. Because we want to know, we want to experience what we're learning. And it's just fantastic, like the night sky.
And experience is rich.
Very.
And that's what's so self-inspiring. When you're manifesting things that you actually put your intent on, and to have it happen, that brings a lot of joy.
There's no greater joy than creating something so outrageous and allowing it to happen and then experience it. Is just beautiful.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to recommend a book. It's called To Life, a master's book of toast. You were involved in that as well?
Yeah. I worked on that as well for the publishing house of Ramtha School, JCK Publishing, and that's one of the most recent books. It's a very comprehensive collection of all of Ramtha's toasts. It's not all of them, but we selected over 480, I think it is. It's like a big number, and it's only a scratch on the surface. But they're very inspiring, and they're organized in a way that you can access them and use them, just like we have been doing here at the end of the show. And highly recommend it. To Life, a master's book of toasts.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I think we're going to have our toast.
Let's do that. I love those.
So this toast, again, is about everlasting life.
And what did the motto say? That our thoughts affect and create what we are saying, what we are speaking. If it changes water, and we're all made out of water, so be ready.
Be ready.
To have the experience of what you're saying.
Exactly.
If you accept, it's all your choice.
Do you have your water? Do you have your wine?
I have some coffee, actually.
Well,
is that okay?
Bless it.
So be it.
Here we go.
To everlasting life. To the love of oneself. I love that which I am. I honor that which I am. I conquer the past that I was. I am born this night. Anew. I am filled with the radiant love of my divine presence. I execute my thoughts as the will of God. I do not execute them for the will of my body. For that which I am is born of the void and of the act of my birth is the love of the eternal for that which I am. O Holy, Holy Spirit, heal me this night and free me from bondage of my own limitations and the illusions of my emotional suffering. Make haste to deliver to me the reality I choose. For I refuse to allow my emotions, the dictates of my body, to circumvent the power of my love, and my authority. I love that which I am. Forever. And ever. And ever. To everlasting life. Here is meeting you in 200 years.
So be that.
So be that. So awesome.
We want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it was a great show.
When you have those quiet moments alone, contemplate what you've heard. Remember, there's a lot more to you, a mystery, a great mystery. And you, no matter who you are out there, have the potential of immortality.
And you are divine.
And you are divine. We will see you next time.
See you then.
This is KRSE on your Channel 7. Yale, Washington to the world. Woo! Time to let your rhythm be born.